So, in my today's speech, I will provide you with the two arguments that I believe are instrumental in believing that for the young talented individual, it is better to stay in Bulgaria than seek other options. The first one is 1 in a million argument, and the second one is the importance of or the sense of community. But first and foremost, onto the things that were said in a previous speech. While we can acknowledge some things that were described in a speech by a previous speaker, like corruption and nepotism and all those problems that are actuality in in all pores of society in most Balkan states, we still believe that it's not that critical that there's no space for a certain individual to find a meaningful job that will give him the sense of self-fulfillment and things like that. Also, there's a thing called private companies, which mainly focuses on employing people who are talented, who have some sort of work ethic, who can actually contribute something, rather than looking after who is in a family relationship with a certain powerful guy and things like that. Moreover, I found some contradictions in the speech regarding a current situation, which is presented as being a low standard country, and the possibilities to choose where you can go. If situation is that bad, how can that environment give you the possibility to actually go wherever you want, where you have a headaches like costs and things like that. Those are the sort of the problems that I see in the speech. Also, regarding possibility of coming back to Bulgaria, the problem is it's pretty assumptive. If you come back to Bulgaria, you can always feel bad about yourself, or you can perhaps be viewed as a failure and things like that. Where in comparison, if you stay in Bulgaria and actually make the most of your talent, which is likely, I think that situation is pretty better in comparative. Now on to the positive arguments. The first one is, as I said, the 1 in a million. Pretty important and essential things in oneself are making a good career, perhaps a good pay out of it, and the self-fulfillment and things like that. Regarding in comparative in Bulgaria, if you are viewed as a talent, if you are a talent, and if you stay in Bulgaria and pursue your goals, even with the problems of nepotism and corruption, as it was mentioned, with your talent, you are still likely to find yourself a good position, a good and meaningful job that will give you satisfaction if you make the most of your talent and if you pursue your goals long enough. And moreover, since there is with the trend of brain drain in the Balkans that is all still ongoing because of the situations that were prescribed, which makes the situation for you a whole lot easier to make the most of it. Once you made the most of your talent and once you pursue your goals and actually made them, you are in the country, you are in the situation where you actually attain some sort of reputation. You're appreciated by your people. Like you are presented as a role model to young kids in a country that is being described as dead end country. Let's put it that way. To actually pursue your goals, even if you have your back against the wall. Now, the situation in comparative in the Western Europe, the fact is, when you go there, you'll meet so many people that are also perceived as a great talent, even bigger than you, perhaps, who come from other countries where in comparative they are perceived as much smarter, more ambitious, and have all the qualities to make a competent working person. And what do we have in that situation? In comparative, you have to work so much harder in order to achieve your goal. Of course, maybe in that situation you'll have a better paying job. But the thing is, you'll always have a problem of comparison. You always need to compare yourself to others, and with that comes the pressure and eventual disappointment if you don't perform as you are expecting to do. And in that situation, you might end up as, I don't know, a burned out individual who is disappointed in oneself. So I believe that in that situation, this is impactful, because through this, it's really better to actually stay in Bulgaria. Before second argument, I'll take you.
Yeah, do you think maximizing your reputation and maximizing glory is always a biological imperative every individual has?
Probably not. Yeah, it can go from go from one individual to another. But I believe that it's better, because in our world you actually have, I don't know, I believe much more satisfaction than in the situation in Western Europe. Now on to the second argument, the sense of community. As you know, in Balkans, there's really very big sense of bond, especially with your family. Individual with the family and his friends. The problem that comes along, if in the Western Europe, as I described already, you are in a situation where you are really far away from your family. You are in a situation when you have to work hours and hours because you have some sort of some chip on your shoulder. You have to work very hard and long, and you don't have time to make any new friends. You don't have time to see your current friends. You don't have time to see your family because they are so far away from you, and maybe they do not possess enough means to see you. And the impact on that is the mental health, which is in their world, it can be very bad for an individual because he is so far away from the loved ones, and those two impacts really, and for all those impacts, I'm very proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
Sorry, give me just a second. I saw stuff my papers. Here we go. First of all, I want to say that I love Bulgaria, but living in a country that is very, very similar. I'm sorry, but we're right about this. Let's see what they say towards our case. So first, let's talk about the corruption point. So they will tell you, look, okay, maybe the government is corrupt, but you can find jobs in the private sector. They value your hard work and whatnot. Why does this not work in countries like Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro, and so on? First, notice that the government jobs usually pay above market rate, which is not the case in Western Europe. And secondly, they provide very high security of having a job, which is not the case in the private sector because labor laws are a lot looser than you will have in Western Europe. But also notice that there is also government influence over the private sector because a lot of the companies, like in construction, development, maintenance of different areas, are connected. They rely on the government, whether on government subsidies, whether on like government contracts and so on. So there is a massive pull of influence through the government to the private sector. This is true in Bosnia, it's true in Bulgaria, it's true in Serbia. So why is this really awful? Look, not only will you have to work in a very corrupt system that you yourself hate, that you feel is destroying the future of you, your family, and so on, but also you're not valued mostly on your hard work. You're valued mostly on your loyalty, on how good you can suck up, on how if you can get the votes and whatever. And this is where you feel awful. You feel like you cannot express yourself. You feel like you have been deprived of democracy. And this is done in like multiple ways a bit later. Even in Serbia, we have this sort of thing. It's like an electoral fraud. It's called the Bulgarian train. That's what we call it, because we are so similar and whatnot. And this makes you feel awful, and it also stops you from having further progress, because you're probably somewhat principled, whatever, and the people that will get ahead are the ones that can like really kiss the asses of the people in charge much better, or like or simply like do the political part of their job much better. Okay, POI closing. Go.
So you say that you grew up in Bulgaria and therefore grew up on things like corruption and is used to it. Why is it going to be so bad for him if he got used to it from the get-go?
Oh, I can see that you come from a very developed country. Look, look, guys. Look, you're living up in a system that is corrupt does not mean that you yourself become immune to that. You grow up watching like TV, you watch how Denmark works, you know your values, you grow up believing in things like competence, things like being like a good person. Your parents might have grown up in a corrupt system, but they usually try to instill values like of you being a good person. Like most people in countries like Bulgaria, Serbia, and so on are not simply like taught to be corrupt. They're not inherently corrupt. They're not bad. They just live in a bad system that incentivizes or like obliges them to do behavior like that in order for them to progress, in order for them to feed their families. That is the answer. No, you do not become simply like, oh, I'm okay with ruining my country. Let's see what else we have here. Let me explain, give you a frame why Bulgaria would not get better. In case they want to run that, all you will become better. Like there are multiple things. Like the obvious thing is first, like very high corruption that has not been addressed. Second, like notice that Bulgaria has a political crisis every second Tuesday, meaning that it's a lot harder to deal with like substantial issues where every political party is in a fight for like votes and so on. Thirdly, notice that Bulgaria has very bad demographics. It is like having an older and older population, and not that many young people are being born, meaning that it's far more strain on financial systems, and it's far harder to develop the country and so on. But also notice fourthly that Bulgaria is suffering a massive brain drain. Even if you don't decide to leave, a lot of your friends will leave, which further makes more strain on the Bulgarian economy and stops it from developing. Fifthly, like notice that Bulgaria, unlike Czechia or Slovenia, is very far from the industrial core of Europe, so it cannot like capitalize, even though it's in the European Union, it has failed to capitalize on that proximity to rich markets like Germany and so on, because they're being like outcompeted by countries like Poland and so on. There are more, they're doing that better. And sixthly, like notice that even if they prove growth is usually very small. It takes a decade to get from 400 euros to 700 euros, and that's not something that you want for your life. Okay, let's do a bit of rebuttal and some like preventive stuff. So first on your family, like notice that even if you live in Bulgaria, you're probably gonna move away from your parents. You're very likely gonna move to another town. So it's not like you're gonna see them like every day. We move, we make new friends and so on. So you're probably gonna see them occasionally either way. But notice this is a lot easier than in the past, because we can talk to our parents with like video calls and so on. Sure, it's not perfect, but it means a lot. And thirdly, like notice that traveling within Europe has gotten really cheap. So you can get like a ticket from Berlin to Sofia for like 80 euros, meaning that you can visit your parents every month, your friends and so on for a weekend. And so it's not that strong of a point either way. But also notice the community, since if they want to run community there, that you feel like part of the Bulgarian community. Notice that every urban city in Western Europe has a big Bulgarian community, because there are so many of them living there. So you probably have access to Bulgarian friends, to Bulgarian culture and so on. But second, like notice there are other ways to participate in a community. You can still watch Bulgarian shows and movies. You can still like play video games with your Bulgarian friends and talk about it and so on. And like thirdly, notice that people have other communities that they can choose to be a part of, so you can still feel satisfied in that sort of way. Okay. Do you guys want a second POI? I want to engage.
Yeah. So if everything in the new state will be just as Bulgaria, but higher salaries, if we prove that the salaries are just not higher, then your case is done.
No. Like, notice that you've ignored most of our case. First, you cannot prove salaries. If that was the case, Bulgarians would not go in mass to Germany. Don't lie. Like, seriously. But also notice that there are so many other things that we talk about, like corruption. And notice how does this work? And this is like very important. We always assume from these debates that you're like a guy just like me going to Bulgaria. But it's 50% of the time this could be like a woman and so on. And notice that probably you've case filed Bulgaria. Notice that massive protests regarding domestic violence in Sofia. Why? Because it's a systemic issue that has not been addressed in 30 years and probably can't be addressed even if the laws change. Like, notice that the culture is still there, it's cemented. But it's not just that. It's things like sexual harassment. It's things like viewing women like they're less capable in the workplace, that their position in the homes. This means that if you're a woman, even if you work for the same salary in Germany, you're probably a lot better off because there is less pressure on you. You're far less likely to like suffer like abuse, and if you suffer it, you're far more likely to get justice, to get protection, and so on. Where does this also work? It works if you're LGBT. Notice that if you're Bulgaria and you're like LGBT, you can't have love, you can't like go on the street with your partner, you can't get married, and so on. This is awful. So let's say, let's say even you're none of these things. Notice that your kids probably will be statistically, at least some of this. And you, as a young person, know, you can imagine how hard it is. That is why you must go, because you want to provide a better life for your children. If you don't, you will feel regret. And notice that you can always like come back later, which is not true on their side. Thank you. I love Bulgaria. You're a great host. I just have to tweet. I love.
Just a couple of seconds, I'm very sorry. Too much rebuttal. Joel and Novak are both from Serbia, right? They said that, and they said it's similar to Bulgaria. They're both young and talented and pretty successful, in my opinion. They still all live in Serbia. Even if they come and say that paychecks are not that great, they're still very, very self-fulfilled because they have developed themselves in different senses and stuff like that. That means that it is possible in Serbia, it is possible anywhere. Let's go to more specific rebuttal. Joel comes and says, oh, company is likely to employ you if you go to Western countries. Like, that is completely not true. Why? Firstly, because there is a million of young and talented people in Western countries, and Matteo already said there is a lot more of the same people as you are there than in Bulgaria. Second thing is that, like, you come there as a stranger, you come there as a person from Bulgaria, you come there as a person with an accent, you come there as someone who doesn't demand much as they conceded, so they don't look at you like you have value. They look at you like someone beneath them and below them. That means that, like, okay, yes, they will employ you, but do I want to be employed somewhere where I'm not respected, where I'm basically disrespected, where I'm not valued as much, where I don't have what I deserve, and I'm never going to get what I deserve, which I will prove later on. Secondly, Joel was lying when he said that, like, oh, you are going to rationally decide to like leave your family and your friends, and you're going to talk to them about it. That's completely false, because not one single person who has lived in Bulgaria, who has these traditional values inherent into them, like, they cannot rationally decide those things, because you do not know how you are going to feel until you actually go and feel the loneliness and feel the pain and feel the drop of your mental health when you are not actually surrounded with those people that you love. But I will explain furthermore in my speech later. Also, yes, he comes and says, you can come to Bulgaria always, like, come back when you have money. When, in 30 years, we have to understand one thing, economy of time is on our side, because on their side, as I said, you are going to be disrespected, you are going to be undervalued, you are going to be underpaid at first. Even if you're maybe going to be paid more than on our side, you're still going to be undervalued. That means that your time of progress is going to be much longer. Therefore, up to a time when you actually succeed in your career, you are going to be 50 years old, and then you're going to come without wife, without children, your parents are going to be dead. That makes no fucking sense. Corruption, I'll let CEO deal with that. I think they have more points on that. Regret clash. I knew this was coming because of Split Open. So, let's talk about one thing. Like, on their side, you have regret for never going to Western countries and trying out. But on our side, let's think about this. You actually waste 30, 20, even if it's 15 of your years and fail. Like, what the actual fuck? We have to value the time that we have. We do not have much time. If you are a young adult, you are like 22, 3, 4 years old, you have like 60 years of your life. Value every single one of it. On Bulgaria, maybe you feel some type of regret, or maybe if I went, but at least I don't waste my time, I stay here, and I have something that is much more likely and much more safe. Also, West is better, in their opinion, and that is like something that every single person believes. That is completely true, and they have completely false narrative about Bulgarian young people. Why? Because they have different values inside of them. Yes, there are some new values that are learned when you are older, when you watch TikToks and YouTubes, but what is more important, they never weigh if the values that your parents taught you, which is traditional values in Bulgaria, like religion, like believing in family, believing in community and stuff like that, are suddenly less important to you, like the values that are basically inherent to your personality are less important to you than what you saw on TikTok. It's not proven and it doesn't stand. Oh, and then they come and say, you are never going to be able to express yourself in Bulgaria because corruption and blah, parties and stuff like that. I don't fucking know. It goes same for every single fucking job. You never can express yourself because you're always going to be love someone. You actually gain the ability to be who you are, to get what you want when you actually become something, and that is on our side. Blah, blah, blah. Nova comes and says, there are other communities. I choose which communities I prefer, and those are the ones in Bulgaria, which are my family and my friends. Now on to our case. Let's talk a bit further about it. So we have to talk about a couple of things. What do I want? I want a career, I want money, I want self-fulfillment, and I want my family and friends. Why do I want this? Let's actually explain what a young Bulgarian adult is. We have to understand that Bulgarian mindset is very different than, like, I would even say Croatian mindset right now, or different than like Western Europe mindset, right? Firstly, because of history. Secondly, because of the value of religion. Thirdly, because of the value of the family. Why? Because you are born and raised in a way that you believe that your family is the most important thing, that you have to have your own family. Even if when you're older, you do not necessarily agree. Those are your inherent values that are a part of your personality that are very hard to be changing later on in your life. And that is very important because that is something that you learned to have to value the most. Why? So why is this very important? Because they also come and said something along the lines of, later on, I forgot what I was going to say. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about family and friends, how this leads to better mental health. As I said, it is inherent to you that family and friends are important. On our side of the house, even if you have less money, like they consider you will have a job and you will pursue your career, and Matteo proved to you that there is actually more chance of you to succeed. On our side, at least have fucking time for your family. Not only for your family that you already have, but to actually have your own family if you want it. Because on their side of the house, for 10 years, you are going to be working for 12 hours a day. You will never have any friends. You will never actually find someone. You can meet someone at your job, but to prove that is likely is very hard. No, I won't have time. I'm very sorry. So that is what is important. On our side of the house, you actually do have time to do those things. You have time to visit your family. Oh yeah, that's what they said. Oh, but now you have video chats and you free cheap flights and whatnot, but you won't have time. That is the fucking issue. You won't have time for 15 years until you are someone. On their side of the house, you are maybe someday going to be someone, but very not likely. On the side of the friends, as Matteo said, there are not going to be any, because as I said, no time. Secondly, very different values, because Bulgarians have very different values than people in Western countries, right? Therefore, just for you to connect is not as likely. But maybe, yes, okay, we are in debate, you're like each other, blah, 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 blah. You still don't have your friends from home. You're going to miss them. You're going to be alone. At least in the beginning, for a couple of years, when you do not settle, you're going to be alone. You're going to feel lonely, which is terrible for your mental health. On our side of the house, let's talk about the jobs. You have respect in the community when you succeed, because it is very important that someone, besides all the corruption and stuff like that, you still succeed. You're going to gain respect, and that is very important to you as a Bulgarian. You are going to actually have normal work schedule, and on their side of the house, as I said, you're going to be discriminated, undervalued, and stuff like that. Let's do a little bit of weighing why we win over Joel and Novak, I hope. Two things. Likelihood and economy of time. Why likelihood? As Matteo said, in Bulgaria now you have Belgrade A, which means less talented people, which means more chance of you to actually get a job and push through all the whatever. Secondly, lack of people like you. Why? Because lack of people generally. And thirdly, the traditional mindset. Less of people are actually going to pursue those high careers. More people are going to be family oriented. Economy of time. You are actually going to succeed faster, save your time, gain what you believe is most important. Vote all. Thank you.
Cool, ready? The extension is quite simple. Life isn't actually about money, it's about the diversity of experiences you have that makes you not just a more wholesome individual, but a far more resilient individual. Essentially, travel broadens the mind. This is something that is important. How does this weigh against opening government? Two ways. One, I'm unsure why having $2 or more an hour actually does make you any more happy. Or secondly, why living in a country that has healthcare means you actually have access and provision to this healthcare. Particularly because of DLO's quite good responses about the idea of anti-immigration sentiment that may impair your capacity to feel safe to interact with the country. Therefore, I think there are problems in the analysis. Ours has far fewer steps, therefore you can be far more certain of them. First step then, why is being away from your family and actually a good thing in terms of your identity formation? Impact I'm going to prove for you is you have more freedom to change yourself and therefore find the best version of yourself you want to be and how you'd want that if you lived in Bulgaria because of globalization of media and expectation setting you'd have of yourself. One, why is optionality meaningfully restrained if you remain in Bulgaria? One, the conservative norms that exist in the society. It is factually the case that insofar as these individual societies are prevalent within things like Orthodox Christianity, but are very conservative in the ways in which the politics exists, it's ways in which you are pressurized to be so. It's quite clear the East-West distinction in ideology, for instance, that is still persistent and deference to authority still exists within the society. Second, the aging population with the conservative narrative creates two things. One, it places a pressure of dependency that scales with proximity. If you remain in Bulgaria, you'll be expected more often to see your parents, but also expected to use the money you're provided to give to your parents more often than you would if you were further away. If you're further away, there are just physical limitations, legal limitations that prevent you from moving your money out of the country. Intuition here, the Conservative government in the UK, for instance, passed a law preventing immigrants from sending money back home because it was appealing to UK sentiments, the idea that the money was leaving the country, which means just a physical restriction if you move away. Even if you'd want to, you have to keep that more money yourself, which means if the clash of top-off is, I don't know how much money people get, maybe they get paid the same, you save more money if you're away from your family just because you're less able to actually send it off in the first place. What I think this means is, thirdly, the presence of religious norms. I want to be very clear in the comparative. You still hold the religious norms if you move away from a country, but you have optionality of selecting different religious norms if you want to. You can now be exposed to Christianity, exposed to Judaism, exposed to Buddhism in ways in which a strong Orthodox church that exists here, that has political presence within the government, restrains the capacity for individuals to have access to this, but more importantly, have the feeling that they can have access to it. The family will take them to the Orthodox church. They will castigate them if they want to try to pursue different religions. It's not just the knowledge of the religion, but being imbued in that experience that allows individuals to know just the depth of it, but have a personal relationship with people that can provide that experience to them, which is the formation of ideas, not just the presentation of ideas. This is a response to why, even if I see it on TikTok, it's not meaningfully distinct. You have to be in the church, in the workplace, with different languages and different individuals for you to integrate it in a way that is personal to you, because it's unavoidable, unoptable, and the pressure for you to do so. Last is the inflationary pressure, with the three other prior mecs I provide, means there is a current now incentive for you to provide far more resources to your family than otherwise would be happening. I.e., inflation means it's harder for your parents to exist and live. They'll likely have less education insofar as the communist state was quite recent, and therefore the degree of provision that your parents had to actualize themselves are far less, and therefore you probably feel more indebted to give it to them if you remain proximate to them, because you see them more often, you see their suffering. It's actually quite good if you're far further away, because the priority should be for you yourself in order to feel what you should do to live your life rather than to live somebody else's. Why therefore, I'll take you later, why therefore do you have optionality if you live in the West? The preemptive, well, it's not preemptive now, but the engagement is, I think it is probably true that you experience a degree of discrimination if you're in the Western nations, right? There's anti-immigrant sentiment that exists. I'm not going to ignore this like opening government. I'm going to weigh against this to see why it's important, why it's less important. One, even though there's anti-immigrant sentiment, it is casted in certain areas of society, typically older societal members, people that are far more politically engaged. Here's the first piece of analysis to why you're likely to be in a young-dominated area of your country, and therefore less exposed to this narrative a priori, but also having a community to insulate yourself against, even if it's the case that there is no Bulgarians present or any cultural normality present. Or I would point out that the idea of brain drain suggests that a lot of other young people similar to your age are in that country in the first place. Let's say you can't find that community, they're somewhere else and you don't want to go to Scotland. Why are you likely to be young-dominated? One, I think the kind of ways in which you are skilled in things that are currently required. Things like coding, things like capacities to communication, things like HR. All of these things are why you had the opportunity in the first place, because there was no people of that country to present you. I don't think you're a farmer, for instance, because I don't think this is what the idea of I don't know what a talented sprout picker means, for instance. And I think this is intuitive what is not required. Even if that's not true, there's self-selection. I think you're likely to self-select into a younger area because you probably feel more relatable to these individuals. The key point of characterization is this. Younger people in liberal democracies are far more likely to have versatility in their ideas, i.e. there's going to be very many different people on different spectrums of ideology, and so far as liberal institutions prize the idea of diversity in selections of ideas, what this means is you're exposed to a vast majority of different people. Some of them might be very similar to your mother and the people you grew up with, i.e. right-wing individuals that believe in the system. There's also a lot of other people who aren't. Why is this important? I'm going to do 6 mechs here, also clashing on the idea of jobs. I'm going to mechanize jobs first. One, all they say is you get good jobs. I think here's why it's better. One, you have an increased number of language skills that is present for the fact you have to persistently use them. Second, the variety of cultures means you can norm select into a different ideology. The variety gives you different expectations of yourself. So you may have a bad expectation of yourself living in Bulgaria, but a reduction in the number of optionalities for you to select into different expectations of yourself. The push of opening opposition is you feel more pressure to be better. I think this is good insofar as one, it just makes you a better individual. But second, if there's more talented people in the UK or whatever, this is where you want to be, because I think you want to be a best version of yourself, and you ought to be the best version of yourself. You compete against people who are the best, you will become better. People are not static, they improve over time and meet their conditions. That's why it's bad to be in Bulgaria if it is true that there's less skilled individuals and you're 1 in a million, because you're likely to plateau. At the end of your life, you'll recognize that there's a degree of disappointment that you didn't actualize yourself, because you understand there are better people like Bill Gates or somebody else, or not less like that extreme. I'll take OO though.
Yes, I want to be surrounded by the talented people, but I do not want, because of those talented people, to wait 30 years to actually accomplish something.
No, but the accomplishment maybe as a job, as you argue. I think the identity formation is what is more important, more immediate to have. Even if you never become successful in a company, I don't think closing government cares that this is important. Why then? The second, also finally for that mechanism, connections. Now you just get a degree of different networks that allow you to have optionality for future jobs. This is 3 mechs of opening government then. Why therefore is the identity more important? One, I think it allows you to have a self-perception and confidence. I.e. if you're able to just know different languages, for instance, you have different vocabulary, different conceptualizations of the word love, for instance. Love in English has 1 word, but there are 5 words in Greek, for instance. The conceptualization of language allows you to understand meaning of things of yourself. Language is the ways in which you understand things. That's one example. Second, you just have a perception of freedom by being away, which means you're more risk-taking. You're likely to do things differently. You're likely to try something better because you don't have the freedom, that you're not bound by the idea that people around you know you. This is a good thing, right? Because you can now reform yourself, which means you're allowed to take risks, which probably means you are going to be more successful. This is more important. What I think this demonstrates to you is by having greater diversity of experiences, maybe it makes you better at your job, but I think identity is prior to anything else because it's the way in which you operate in the world, probably makes you more successful. It's probably what is the meaningful value at the end of your life, not having $7 or more an hour. Closing government.
Sorry. Man. We're going to deal with the 2 important clashes in this debate. Firstly, we're going to explain to you why we'll have a better, higher paying, better quality of life in Bulgaria on our side of the house. And secondly, we're going to explain to you why your relationship with the family, your identity, and your feelings will be better on our side of the house. Rebuttals to CG will be integrated. Let's start why we'll have better quality of life and better job on our side of the house. And let's tackle some things from CG here. Firstly, they tell us you can choose different ideologies. I'm not sure how this works. Like that, the fact that I see a different ideology or different norm does not mean I conform to it. I see it all the time in YouTube videos, in people around me. Notice there are immigrants in Bulgaria, which is important because that means that I see different ideologies from the Middle East, from other places. That the fact that these are not immigrants from Europe, but from the Middle East or other places does not mean these are worse ideologies. That means that this, even though that doesn't really matter in our opinion, is symmetric. Secondly, they tell us, but you will have better places where you can learn from better people. Notice, we believe that the amount of really good coders in Bulgaria is probably less than Germany and France. But there are still there. That means I can just move to the best companies in Bulgaria because there are less programmers in general, and therefore I can still see the best programmers. Secondly, just internet courses are so common for these things, and I can see it in so many places. I can see the open source course of Linux, for good's sake, and see the mails of Linus Torvalds. So we don't think that this changes. Okay, let's understand why we just have it's better in Bulgaria. Firstly, in terms of cost of living, it was already said, but let's understand how much. Firstly, in terms of Bulgaria, you are not only have much lower lower rents, but secondly, you are likely to have if already some family home, some place where you can stay at least in your 20s, which is crucial because you don't need to pay rent at all. But secondly, in terms of that, many times cheaper rent in Europe means you are much far away from your job. That means more transport time, more transport costs to all of these things. But moreover, yes, fruit is actually more expensive. Everything is fucking more expensive. Your bread is more expensive. That means that you need to pay more for pasta, for everything that you have. You need to ask yourself twice before you go to a restaurant, because restaurants in Bulgaria are just much cheaper. And notice this is just logically reasonable when you understand that the minimum wage in Bulgaria is $1.50, and the minimum wage in Germany is above $10, about $12. In France, something similar. So you can understand how so much things are just cheaper. Secondly, in terms of you will be accepted, let's tackle this corruption thing that is, in my opinion, a bit ridiculous. Because notice, let's take the framing of HR things, high-tech, etc. An international company that is now creating an office in Bulgaria will not cave to any corruption demands. Why? Because they can literally be prosecuted by the United States authorities if they do that, and there is incentive for the people who are discriminated to actually do that. Secondly, we think that there is huge incentive of Bulgaria to actually accept as many companies as possible, not to create disincentives or bad stories. Just saying corruption and bad government is not actually analysis. So now we think that even in construction, on their best case, you get their own construction company. But if you work for a construction company, you don't care about that much. Now, let's tackle. Yes, we do agree that the places that you are in are more diverse, are not the really racial against racial, etc. But secondly, but notice, they just assume that we learn a new language so fast. Yes, we understand that probably in sometimes you learn German or French, but it means that it's much harder for you, especially in the start. That means you're unlikely to get a good job. And notice, in most of these places, you need the language. If you want to be a lawyer or paralegal, if you want to work in high tech, you speak with your team. You need to code together. That is crucial in terms of, yes, I'm not racially against them as an interviewer, but I see that he's less likely to contribute and understand to the team. In a discussion, he will be much more silent and he's just uncomfortable when he speaks because sometimes people don't understand him. I think that, yes, that accent and these things affect people for a long time, and the loss of confidence it causes is huge in terms of that. Secondly, yes, let's take all the analysis about and the stigmas of Bulgaria, of OO, and understand why this contributes also to him not being accepted. Because notice, we think that because of the perception of corruption, many times they don't view the university degrees from Bulgaria in the first place as something important. Notice, I don't prove to you and don't want to prove to you that they won't get a job. They mean that they will get a much lower job as a junior or someone that is a student in something, that they won't get higher paying jobs after that because they don't see and people don't want to interact with them so much, etc. And they will be grounded in these things, which is crucial. Now, on our side of the house in Bulgaria, you get the university education. I think at first there's less stigma about it. Many times the stigma is too much, as OG say. But secondly, this is what you have. Now, we think that moreover, in terms of you're more likely to have and be able to, for example, learn more courses in order to get a better job. Because firstly, you don't need to pay rent so much because you can live your family until you actually have that. Secondly, you're much likely to get lenders and things like that from around your environment, things like that. So it's just more likely. All in all, that means that you just have more likely to get a better job. Because notice, there is huge incentive to put more high-tech companies and things in Bulgaria because the wages are lower. That means all in all, you have better quality of life. Before I move on, OG.
Yeah, so in order to get any job in Bulgaria, you'll have to suck up to either corrupt asshole Borisov or pro-Russian parties.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. That is just not true. That is total assertion. We answered that already. Let's move on. Let's talk about family. Okay, several answers to what we get. They tell us, look, you can choose different norms of people. I'm really unsure how from the million Turks that immigrated to Germany, they moved to another religion. Yes, they are still Muslim. People don't change the religion so much. Secondly, in their best case, we think that the norm to help your parents when they're in dire need is something that is fucking universal. We don't think that Germans don't do that, but moreover, we think that when you see your German counterpart, you see that his parents live in a better place, in a health, that he cares for them and changes what a specific specifically care home, etc., they do that. And they say, you're not near to them, you don't see their pain. But notice the analysis of OG themselves. They tell you, you can video chat with them. You literally see them sweat, suffer from dementia, need to choose what chemotherapy they are going, and you're not there to help them. And they tell you that specifically because of the analysis they tell you about the traditionality and why you need to help your parents. Notice, because the aging population, this is less likely that you will have many brothers. This is less likely that there will be good health for them, which is crucial because that means they are dependent on you, and you feel that you actually lost them and you actually abandoned them in most of these cases. You don't check for them with the chemotherapeutic doctor what is best for them. You don't check for them their best home. But moreover, your ability to find a partner is lessened because you want to find a Bulgarian partner with your own culture, with the same language. You're less likely to do that with a small environment where most of them you're not near Bulgarians. All of this means that you need to oppose this motion. I call you to oppose.
Very enthusiastic. Ready to go? Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I want to respond to the two pushbacks we got from member opposition. Weigh our case in isolation, why it's important. Bench weighing, opening opposition, closing opposition. First of all, two pushbacks. The first one is that you do not conform. 3 responses. They say Bulgaria have other people, like immigrants and things like that. Does not respond to anti-immigration sentiments that William has already identified. Which means if you're approximate to norms in the societies that William has told you, you have a counterforce in the household that you live in, you're probably not going to like those immigrants anyway. Therefore, you're probably not going to be able to develop the exposure of those norms that closing opposition are saying. But also because of the norms around you, you probably get peer pressure to demonize them yourself because you want to maintain your own friendship groups rather than exploring other ones because you don't have the forced ability to do so. I.e., that when you move, you are forced to make new friends, therefore you have to make those friends in the first instance. The second of all, just say that you do not need to conform in the first place. No, William's analysis is not dependent on that. Just the exposure of those norms and the ability for you to potentially opt into conforming to those norms is what is necessary to access these impacts. On their side, you do not get the option of doing that in the first instance. That is what is most important. I'm going to weigh that in a minute. Thirdly, on internet courses, come on guys, 2 easy responses to this. 1, it's very uncertain that they access those courses in the first place. But second of all, they do not respond to the proximity analysis in William. I.e., you need to interact with individuals, you need to understand the nuances of those norms, you need to actually understand how it operates in society for you to have a genuine appreciation of how those norms develop. You can't just learn it online. That's why we think work experience is good. That's why we think going and experiencing work before you actually go to the workplace is a good thing. That is an intuition that we all share as individuals. Then they say suffering of parents. 2 responses. 1, presumably when you get more ability to have a stable life in these societies, you really have family reunification to bring your family over if that is necessary. But second of all, suffering is likely to happen anyway, because if there are structural limitations of the Bulgarian healthcare system, presumably the fact that they are aging or doing very badly means that you probably will not be able to help them to a large, significant degree anyway. I think that is pretty absurd. Right, let's do the weighing of the case and the bench weighing. What do we get from opening government? We get in the Prime Minister's speech, you get more freedom of expression and minorities can necessarily be helped. Then in the DPM speech, we get more framing of these harms. What we do much better is 2 things. 1, we explain the comparative of this and explain what the benefits of this freedom of expression looks like. Because if you check your flow, honestly, just please file, check your flow. They say less freedom of expression through the laundry list of the Prime Minister's speech as to why you get more freedom of expression. Second of all, just more analytical certainty. Let me go more detailed into the weighing. Why is conceptualization the most important thing in the round? Because what William has said is that you will not be able to access those norms unless you can conceptualize that those norms could exist in the first place. This is particularly important for what I've just said in response to closing opposition about the nuances, the interaction of these norms. If you're young and talented, presumably you have provided the Bulgarian education system or your teacher has spotted something new in you, something that other students do not share, a yearning for something different, a yearning for something more. This is really important, because if you're different, you need to explore these yearnings. Through William's analysis, we've proven that presumably you stop this yearning from happening. You shut off that pathway because of all of the proximity analysis that William has given, that you do not listen to these urges. You shut down because of Bulgarian norms of getting married early, for having children, having a stable job. All of these sorts of things means you don't access those things on opposition side of the House that is particularly important. But on identity formation, why it's really important. First of all, it's immediate. You're likely to have more exposure to norms on our side, therefore you have this first over a job, therefore on priority weighing, we probably are likely to access these first. But third of all, just diversity is higher, right? Think of the intuition of dating apps, right? You presumably are exposed to more people than you ever would have been in a social circle if you didn't have a dating app, right? The ability for you to have a diversity of norms and experience and preference, experience, like different sort of people on that dating app means that you have more diversity to the way you've exposed it. That is why it's really important in the first instance. A couple of extra pieces of weighing then against on the bench. First of all, just harm intensity, right? We have more harm intensity on our side because believe me, the feeling of not meeting your preferences, diversing those things, means you're restricting your own agency to something that potentially could have happened in the first place. That means when opening government is like, well, you can move back later. If you do realize you're a conservative, you can move back later. That is a stronger mechanization than the return mechanism that opening government gave, which is that if you fail at your job, you'll return. No, you'll return if it's more conservative, and that is a stronger mechanism there. Second of all, just path dependency. We access more long-term weighing against opening government, because really the exposure of norms leads to the impacts of that Williams mentioned. They get more jobs, you can access more things like the language things, all that sort of thing, which is much better on our side. Second of all, just more analytical certainty. You yourself know what you want, and you know you want to diversify your preferences. We don't know that this actor loves money, wants to maximize their money to the largest degree possible. Presumably some money is all they need to survive. Presumably we should allow them to have access to those preferences. We meet that better, therefore there's more analytical certainty that this actor cares about what we say rather than what opening government says. Thirdly, optionality. This means we can access the democracy impact better than opening government. Why? Because the individual may be conservative, so if they realise they don't like democracy, they can move back and realise that they don't like democracy. That means we access their impacts better. Closing government do not rely upon this, but prove that more mobility means that if you do like more conservatism, you can move to other places around as well. Okay. Right, so, and the final thing is that Prime Minister and DPM have never weighed why economic benefits should be weighed higher than psychological or social benefits. This is why DPM's community analysis was only a mitigation of opposition bench. We've proven why social benefits must place higher in this debate. Then, against closed opening opposition, very simple. I think that we've proven why family distance is necessary on our side of the House, therefore flipping the claims of opening opposition. Either you need to have a distance from your family to develop more about yourself. Because you yourself know what you want. You should prioritize yourself because also you're living longer. Your family has had the agency to explore their life. You are more malleable and more mobile at younger ages. Therefore, you should prioritize yourself at younger ages rather than your family who've already been distanced in the first place. I think we've already dealt with the stranger analysis because we've explained that, look, you self-select into younger areas which are more likely to be yourself. But if they have considered brain drain, presumably there are Bulgarian sub-communities that you can join in these areas, in these countries, and presumably you can do these sorts of things anyway, so I'm not sure why they're strangers and language barriers. That also deals with closing opposition's impacts as well. We flip, therefore, the Bulgarian values and history because we show how that restrains you. Open opposition don't prove why that is a benefit to you in the first instance. Against closing opposition, on cheaper rent, transport and food, quality of life increases are not the same as standard of living. Because standard of living is stuff that you can just get still a safe amount of money for you to do this. Presumably, you can't push a burden onto op to defend a world in which you would move to a country where you literally go into poverty. You can't afford anything whatsoever. I think that is an unreasonable burden to defend. Therefore, you are likely to have some level of standard of living, but we've proven why the impacts of psychology should weigh more over closing opposition in this round. Second of all, we just have more immediacy weighing, as I've said. But also, we prove the self-selection mechanization as well. On language barriers, we prove why exposure is necessary to improve these language barriers. We may bite the short-term bullet of language barriers, but if it's true there are sub-communities, and in the long term you learn more exposure to norms, this gets better over time, and long-termism is the most thing to prove that you're going to be successful in the first instance. On junior jobs, they don't prove why we should care about this mechanization, why money is most important. Therefore, psychology is the most important thing, so closing government with this round.
May I think it's very offensive to assume that because the motion said that you're a talented young person, that all of the normative norms and all the things that you want to do and to achieve are liberals. All the case coming from cousin governments that you want to have more liberal norms and that you want to learn more about the world and that you want to achieve all these abilities, we think that it's just asserted. The fact that you're talented does not mean that you prioritize in your life learning new stuff or learning new things. But notice, even if you do that, you know where I thought I learned the most about new things in debate. I did that for 4 years in my university, and I met so many people from the Balkans, from different people, from the UK, from Thailand. If you want to achieve that, you don't need to move away to a different country. You can just do that. We think that they strawman my partner's answer when they say, oh, but online is not that good. Yes, we did debate online, but then I actually met people and I talked to them, and we think that it's enough to achieve most of the things that they want. Before I continue explaining why we think it's very paternalistic, the case that they're giving, also what opening government saying about, oh, but even if you're a corrupted country does not mean that you agree to those liberal values, to those values, truly not sure why. I'm going to have 3 points in my speech. I'm going to explain why you can't always go back and why that is not a silver bullet in this debate. Then I'm going to explain why you're less likely to succeed in that work. And then I'm going to talk about friends and family and why just saying, oh, but you have more Bulgarians people doesn't mean that you like the Bulgarian people that exist today in Germany, for example. Let's tackle case coming from cousin government. First thing that they say, look, you're going to have conservative values, and now you will be able to learn new things. Already dealt with that in the framing, that maybe you just don't want to do that. But secondly, notice the fact that for 20 years, 22 years, people pumped you up with specific values about being conservative, about being with your family. Yes, moving away to a different country may enable you to access new normative values, but does not mean that it accesses you with the incentive to learn all of those things. If for 20 years someone would tell you if you're going to do something specific, you're going to go to hell, I'm truly not sure why just saying that there's a different option all of a sudden going to make you feel, oh, maybe my parents died for me for 25 years when raising me. If that's what they want to do, they have to meet that burden and explaining why you're all of a sudden just seeing new options, meaning that you want to change that. Because notice that many of those people already see online that there are new options and don't want to try it, and they never actually analyze it. Second thing that they asserted is, look, we think that most places where there's racism against immigrants is in an environment of old people, not new people. Panel, checking your materials. Zero analysis towards why the old people are the ones that are so racist against immigrants. Notice, young immigrants take away jobs of young people. Therefore, the older people don't feel it as much as a young person in Germany when he wants to get into a high-tech job, and the immigrant from Bulgaria that's so talented stole away his job. So we just don't agree with the premises. Secondly, their premise about, oh, but there are no old people in your job. Truly, CTO, CFO, CO, probably all are 40 or 50. So even if they want to claim that those are the ages where you have that racism, you're still going to encounter that when you have to go through an interview in order to pursue and get better and better at your job. And thirdly, no, you know what? I just think that it takes away of the benefits of new normative norms and your ability to move on in your life. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about why you can't always go back. Like opening government wants you to believe that it's a silver bullet. Couple of answers. We think that opening opposition already mentions that you're going to feel like a failure, and we agree. We think that's very true. But couple of more, sorry for saying that, structural reasons why it's not that easy, right? A, notice, you're going to be ashamed. You told your family that you're going to do that in order, like opening government, them on say, to send them money. You said that you're going to do that you're going to rip yourself away from them in order to achieve more money. Actually saying that you weren't able to do the things that you promised them that you're going to do is not that easy. Secondly, we think that because there's brain drain, many people in Bulgaria today feel like all of those people that left are betrayers, right? They betray the fact that there's a country that we still need to build, a country that still need to be based upon young people. Therefore, going back puts a lot of stigma on you, and it's not going to be as easy to go back to Bulgarian society after you've been labeled as somebody who just walk away because it's hard. Thirdly, notice, because you just invested a lot of the money in the movement. Why is it crucial? Because we think that A, it means that it's not going to be that easy to get to make the decision to go back. And secondly, even if you make that, it's not just going back to the same point of time time, it's going back a lot further, and it's going to be a lot harder for you to achieve the same things that you would have achieved unless you moved away. Now let's talk about your chances of succeeding. Because notice, opening government says that you're going to need to work hard and you're going to get exhausted, and there are many people around you. Notice, we don't just talk about the pressure and a lot of people around you, because maybe those people are not competing on the same jobs, and let's assume the best case of opening government, that there are a lot of jobs and everybody are competing against new jobs. What does my partner gives you? My partner gives you that even if you're the only Bulgarian in that specific work, and there are not so many new immigrants trying to achieve that, why is it still going to be hard for you to advance in that job? Because of stigmas, because of language. Notice, being an ESL is not that easy. People sometimes don't understand my argument. It's a real struggle. Why is it crucial? Because closing governments want to say, oh, it's just $2 more per day. Notice, it's not $2 more. It's your ability to achieve the insurance and the healthcare that they want. But secondly, it enables you to get more interest in your job. Before I explain why this is crucial, I will deal with opening.
Given there's a brain drain, this means it's normalized to get back, and there are probably channels that make it easier on your side.
No, but if there's brain drain, the country needs to prevent it. How the country prevents it? By saying that everybody that's going through brain drain is somebody that's bad, who betrays the country. That's how they try to prevent the brain drain from the get-go, and this is why it's hard to get back. The country doesn't just say, oh, you wanted to leave, now let's get you back, because that allows brain drain to happen. If countries want to stop it, they have to say bad things over those people. So we think that it's crucial, because it means that the fact that you can't move on in your job because you're not going to get advanced means that the interest that you have in your job, you're going to do for 10, 15, 20 years, probably the same things in your job. If you're so talented and curious, you probably want to learn new stuff and to do new stuff in your job, in the same sector that you chose to work, and therefore you get it more in the house and more money. Thirdly, and lastly, family and friends. Opening a position says, you know what, before that, the last answer. They say, oh, but you have private sectors that's also corrupt. Notice, Microsoft, Amazon, Fortnite are all international companies that are located within Bulgaria. If corruptions were so bad, those companies would not want to put their name under corruption. Therefore, there are still many options for you in Bulgaria to go without being corruption, and you have the ability to move on. We think that your interest and you're willing to get up, this is what wins the debate for us.